Let's kick off here. Let's see if I can find the clicker button. That's me. How do you like that goofy-ass title? That really screwed him up, too. I can hardly get out of my own mouth. If you're ever negotiating a title, don't get creative. It's not the time or the place. Awesome. OK, so I really want to talk about, actually, I'll go back to the title, the exponentials of the modern consumer's conversion path, right? So we really want to discuss today where commercialism is going in the future and really what we need to do as hoteliers or vendors. I think we're all part of, whether third-party vendor or hoteler, owner, manager, brand, we're all part of the lodging industry, right? And so there's a lot of changing that's going to happen, so we need to be in a very self-educational place because most of us don't have time to go back to college, and if we did, I guarantee you those professors wouldn't know what's going on either because it's moving so fast. So if you weren't homeschooled, I recommend taking it up. OK, so let's just get right into it. So let's talk about where things are at today. You probably know a lot of this, but I'm just going to reiterate some major things that I think are important to be aware of that are where we're at today, which is that mobile has leapfrogged desktop globally. Now, in the States, it's a little bit more 50-50 still, but Latin America, it's leapfrogged. Asia, it's leapfrogged. And so you hear the term mobile first. It's not a new term. It is absolutely where things are at. Everything you develop, every picture you take, everything in content should be mobile first. It's the way that the rising middle class of the rest of the world has leapfrogged the need for desktops and computers and laptops, right? The next is search is being surpassed by social as the greatest access point to the web. So if you're in a world still where you're kind of thinking Google is better than Yahoo and Bing, that's really 50% of the mix of business. App, tablet, and phone are major ways people access and consume the World Wide Web. So that's certainly, whoop, get a little excited here on this clicker. It has a laser, too. I may not give it back. Lean back consumption is here to stay, right? So you're probably familiar with this term, which is the notion that you more casually and conveniently consume the World Wide Web and your content, right? Which is that, I don't know if you, I love traveling, I live to travel, and when I travel, and I'm fabulous at it. I can guess any hot-wired hotel globally. I have not once misguessed a 5-star hotel. Hint, check those little check-in fees, right? Like it's always the same. But what I'll say is that even though I'm incredible at checking flights, getting rental cars, getting the best, I don't even need to ask you for a discount. I can find it myself. It still takes me probably easily an hour and a half to 2 hours combined, if not certainly more, to really plan an excellent trip, right? And so that is lean forward search, right? Which is what we're used to. We're looking through hundreds of hotels, and there's hundreds of hotels that are hundreds of hotels worth of junk that I don't want to see, and that's going to start to go away, and we're already starting to see that a little bit. The next is passive media through mobile video is the greatest content element consumed in 2018. That was where Facebook put their bet. I don't know if you found yourself, looking through the videos like the cat just keeps missing the couch. And you can't stop watching. And maybe that is my elderly millennial mindset. My term to my marketing and media team, our cliche line at Red Line is that we run marketing like a Wall Street day trading war room. And when it comes to content, I ask my content team, does this put a ring around your ass? Which means that, of course, that the content is so good that you are still on the toilet, still watching silent videos. Right? It's a good one. It furrows an eyebrow if you say that in public. All right, and then last is ads themselves are shoppable and are expedited through social payment methods, right? Which means that if you're looking at it, old school days, you can't click on the billboard on the side of the road. It's at the top of the funnel, but really ads are bottom of funnel. They're qualified. They're in front of you. And if you want to transact, you can do it right now, and you don't have to get out your credit card anymore to do it because someone in your magic genie phone has remembered every credit card you possibly have because once you said, OK, and now you're deuced, right? So that's where we're at today. And where are we going? OK, so paid messenger interactions will become mainstream. We've maybe heard about this. I don't think I've, as a consumer, seen it be particularly prevalent yet, but it's certainly coming. And if you've been to Asia recently, you know that Alipay, WeChat, those players are really the first guys making inroads into this. God, I just keep thinking I'm hitting the laser, but I'm not. All right, virtual assistant purchasing will be guided by deep consumer understanding. So again, I don't know how deep you are into Alexa and Google Home. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with her. She turns all the lights on in my apartment, but some days when like the internet shits the bed, then nothing turns on, and I'm just in darkness emotionally and physically in my apartment at night when I come home after long hours, single and lonely. So right now it's kind of a technical piece, but we're definitely getting to a place where as Alexa or Google starts to know what you're writing, what you're emailing, who you're talking to, it's going to start to make recommendations, and it's going to know more about you than you can imagine. There was a certain very prominent CEO that at the NYU conference said, we know more about our guests than Google. And if I were in the room, I would have said, ha! Incorrect. And that is incorrect. We don't know more. I mean, unless your maids are really good at checking for used Cheeto bags in the garbage can after you leave. Google knows a lot more about you. And if you write a letter to Sal and say, Sal, let's go to Sydney this weekend, Sal is going to see ads that Google scraped from their Gmail and start pitching poor Sal ads for the Homewood Suites. So that's where we're going there. So it's going to get a lot better, and you're going to get much more comfortable. It's going to be in your car, it's going to be in your phone, it's going to be in your home, and it's going to start to make recommendations versus this awful, difficult, I don't know if anyone does the music by voice, but like getting Siri on a HomePod to play the music you want. It's like, not that song, next song. God, I'll do it myself. That's going to change really quick. The next is augmented reality will drive product discovery and brand interactions. So again, we haven't really experienced this very much, but again, Magic Leap comes to mind immediately for me. They're the multi-billion-dollar augmented reality company who are driven deep into every level of entertainment. And right now, we don't really see it very much because there's a hardware piece that has to come to that. But even with the new iOS, I was just talking to Lauren Gray, who will speak to us later on a panel about, where's Lauren? There's that guy. About the new updates in iOS where you have the facial recognition, right? And so augmented reality is going to hit our phones a lot quicker. And so the hardware problem is going to be solved. And that makes it that you can tour a room and see out the window that you're buying. So product transparency is going to explode. And it's not just going to be Lucasfilms, on the Harry Potter experience. CRM integration will drive targeted marketing efforts. So right now, LinkedIn is probably one of the biggest guys integrating CRMs into everything they're doing. But that means that your database, we've heard forever that you should be capturing your people and capturing your database. And finally, every platform is going to start to be able to do something with that if you have it. So that's where things are coming in. That's right around the corner as well. Brand community will be very powerful. So right now, you've certainly heard the top, mid, and bottom of funnel discussion. And when I think of top of funnel, I just think of billboards and stuff like that. And bottom of funnel, I think of, that Dyson vacuum I searched for, and that fucker just keeps showing up for the next 365 days, right? And so what's going to happen is there needs to be a way to get brand discovery out there, and it's going to be communal, which is, of course, like social sharing and stuff like that. And we've seen some great one of the biggest moves right now is Amazon Spark, if you're familiar with that, which is where Amazon is kind of taking this Instagram lens and trying to get people to be like, oh my God, I bought this fabulous dress off of, I didn't. I have a picture of a woman with a dress. I did not buy a fabulous dress off of Amazon, but she could take a picture and be in front of the Grand Canyon, and then that's me, and you can buy it right here. And so that social brand community is going to be very powerful. It's going to be less brand is super powerful, and if the person doesn't like it, they just walk away with their feet. People are going to be able to directly interact with the brand and influence exactly where it's going without even being a social influencer. And the next piece is reviews will be recent and qualified to the subject consumer. This is an area that I think we have enormous potential in. If I had a second life, I would immediately walk off the stage and start a startup that changes how reviews are completely done, which is dynamic and qualified, right? I don't want a review from a diaper bag carrying mom because I'm a hip, for like 2 more years, but then it's over for me. But, I still have a little bit of party left in me, and if I go somewhere on a weekend, I want those reviews to be relevant to people who are talking to me. So if someone has never traveled before and they're super complaining about everything, that's going to be a problem. I want someone who equally complains about fake eggs as much as me, but that's kind of one of their only 2 or 3 things they complain about. And so reviews are going to get super relevant rather than this blur of 4 years of awkward reviews when the hotel was renovated, 3 different management companies, or the product blah, 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 right, has evolved or not evolved. And then the real question is, what does this mean to me, right? So The idea is to scare you a little bit. We should be scared. I mean, and my kind of undercutting knife term for the OTAs, which I genuinely love, is legacy OTAs, right? Which is that they're in a position that they're due for disruption as well. Everybody is. All of us in the room are. And so how do we kind of get ourselves there and be ready for the changes that we can't predict? Many of us are so busy, we have no time to constantly be just learning where the market's going in every single piece. And so there's things that we have to work into our daily lives, really, to make sure we're prepped for this and we can track with the change as it comes to us. So the first thing I think this really means to us is that retail pricing is going to give way to personalized pricing made possible by qualified points of purchase. So what this, again, means is that in work, I love the Google Meta topic. It is probably 50% of our media spend at Red Lion. So if you're not on that train, chugga-choo-choo, like, get on that puppy. So retail pricing, we have this world where parity is sort of super important, but what Google was is they kind of didn't give two Fs who has public parity, and they're looking for the lowest rate no matter what. They don't care how qualified it was. Remember when we had this thing called closed user group, which was like a way to privately discrete a unique set of buyers on the OTAs, where now it's probably like 90% of their mix of business. Everything's closed. There is no such thing as a true fence in a lot of ways. And Google, if you happen to have a website and are trying to plug that into Google Meta, you might know that Google is looking for your lowest, most deeply qualified rate to put public, where formerly that was a world where here's a public rate and here's a private rate. And so that world of public pricing parity is going to go away. And what's going to happen is people are going to look for ways to hide and blur the pricing to kind of get to a personalized level. And it doesn't mean what Amazon did 10 years ago when they took DVDs and just tried A/B testing. Should have AA'd that stuff. Good tip, Charlie. And they said, let's just give different prices to different people. Everybody lost their minds, and Amazon made this awkward public statement, said they would never give unique pricing to different people. What I'm saying is it's not just random different pricing. What it's going to be is you're a student, so we'll give you an extra 2%, and you are a AAA member, so you earn 1%, and you're a Chase Sapphire member, so we'll give you another 0.5%, and your new unique price for this unique product creates hundreds of thousands of permutations of odd prices that can almost not be tracked by human in a strategic mind and have to be either machine tracked if there's even the technology to track it, which I would argue there isn't at the moment. So public pricing goes away, which dramatically changes your revenue strategy, right? How much of our RMSs and our revenue management conversations is based on comp set pricing and comp set demand, which is going to get dramatically blurred. Competitive pricing, wow, I'd sure like to skip to my next points, huh? Pricing becomes significantly less important. With it goes the notion of parity management. So that's what I just said. Product integrity becomes paramount, which is, again, hyper transparency. So sometimes, I get, Star is a great example, and I do love Star, but sometimes I feel like this conversation gets promoted which says, like, what are the revenue managers doing wrong? How are they losing all this ADR when all the occupancy growing? And it's the most painful, dumb question. Like, one of the biggest problems with why ADR is going away while occupancy rises is that transparency is now on the consumer side, right? So we are no longer as hoteliers benefiting from a consumer that doesn't have unlimited time and poor tools to shop pricing, right? At some point, they just gave up and picked the last 4 hotels they shopped, and that's why ADR stayed high, because we could micro-monopolize the pricing, where now there's hyper-transparency not only into pricing, but into product, right? So there's a brand crisis that's already here, which is that people don't need to see a Marriott on the side of a concrete box driving down the freeway no longer to know if that's good or bad, and to say, I would never do an independent because it doesn't have Marriott on it, which is a stamp of quality. Now, Siri can tell you the quality pretty vividly there, and it's only going to get more and more impressive with the weight of live reviews and picture and video content. So product is going to become incredibly important. So if you have owners that are saying stuff like, how am I going to get my money back out of product, now is the time more than ever that a crummy product is going to really cost you. This nonsense notion of we need every hotel guest in the world to stay here once, if you've maybe repeated that if you have a product that's maybe less than your favorite, is going to be really risky moving forward. The next is, of course, content is king, which is linked to that, which is that I have this rule that if it rhymes, I don't want to hear it when it comes to marketing. I hired a guy that came from a great Madison Avenue firm, and I said, listen, you're going to see what I had done in marketing before you came here, and you're going to kind of roll your eyes at a little bit of the rhyming in my sales and promotions, and then you're going to say that's stupid, but then when you're building the promotions, you're going to find out how hard it is not to do cheesy rhyming promotions. And so we've really got to get away with that and really bring a voice that's relevant to our product, to the consumer, because people don't want to be rhymed at. I mean, I'm sure you do what I do, is immediately delete anything that sounds hokey, because I'm an authentic cat, just like you are, right? Marketing must be seamless and non-intrusive. So again, marketing is going to get much more difficult as well, right? Like it has to be, Mark Zuckerberg said in 2017 that his goal at Facebook was to create a news feed that people would prefer marketing in the news feed as opposed to having all friend and organic material, because Marcy just isn't that entertaining after a while, right? That the idea is that that marketing is so relevant to the consumer that it is almost like product discovery, which is actually quite fun if it's really done well. And in order to play in even the direct world, right? I'm not even talking about third party, I don't like my 15% OTA commission, right? What I really mean is that marketing must be seamless and non-intrusive, and you've got to be driving that content, because if you're not driving that content, you're not even a player in your own strategy. So that's an important place to get there. And then third parties are here to stay. And so as we were talking about Google, I mean, direct, I don't even know what direct really is anymore. It certainly is not. CRO is not a cheap direct channel. Google is not a cheap direct channel. If you are not good at Google, I guarantee you it's more expensive than your OTA partners in a lot of cases, right? And so third parties are here to stay. There is no such thing as easy access to driving consumers anymore. And so they're here to stay, and you've got to be ready to play in that arena. And so that's kind of a, I would... and again, there's going to be a lot of new players. I mean, Amazon is going to go very social. Facebook is absolutely going to be bringing heavy booking tools. Google is here to play, and Meta as well. It's not going to stop. So what can we do about it to, again, be ready and prepared for it? I've got 3 points. So, and these are kind of high level. We have a 7-hour session after in the back if you want to hear the more details. Embrace new mindsets of segmentation. So the way you look at your data is super dangerous if you're still looking at P&L segmentation, right? And someone 25 years ago got together a P&L and said, we've got to report what we're up to here. And so they put down 6 or 7 terms, and then someone in revenue said, I'd like 3 more. Someone in finance said, oh, it's a little much. And what we've done is we've taken a tool that's built for a roll-up purpose to report on performance financially, and given it to our strategists and our lever pullers and said, why don't you go make some cake out of this, right? Which is an awful way to actually optimize revenue. And so the reality is, if you were to redesign your segmentation, you would get pretty aggressive in how many segments you could come up with. And so my proposal is that you stop trying to put your data in a box. It's like your data should be every day a 10,000-piece puzzle that you have to put together every single day, right? Or that you're putting together over a period of time. And what happens is, if you limit how you see what's going on in that puzzle, you and your director of sales and director of marketing are sitting there, and you've got someone's putting together the saddle on the horse, someone's putting the irises in the bottom right corner, but nobody is touching that massive top right corner of blue sky, because all the pieces look the same, right? And so what happens is you build something that says sky, but sky could be up here, and it could be in the armpit of the farmer, and so sky is all over, right? And so your job is to put together that puzzle as well as possible. And so the reality is that we need to see our data, in fact, as it is, and as it's being consumed and purchased. So these are, in the land of Calvin's Kool-Aid, what I call my 4 lenses of market segmentation right now. And I think this will probably evolve. But I'll tell you a little bit of, and you don't have to like write this down and tell your kids about it at dinner tonight. But the 4 that I think are very important right now to be watching in all elements are, first, of course, channel, and that's super easy, right? Which is that we don't want to be looking at OTA as a segment, because every single legacy OTA has multiple different levers and multiple different behaviors in how the price is managed, right? So if you, as a revenue manager, are managing your data and only seeing OTA as a category, there's at least 2, 3, or 4 major players in that bucket that are optimized different, but the performance is rolled up into one, which is a massive mistake. So you want to understand channel very uniquely. CRO and call center is completely different than internet booking engine, right, or booking.com. And so you've got to understand each channel as they come in because it really speaks to a customer path and a strategy implemented against each of those channels. The next would be, of course, cost of distribution. This is old news as well, right? But it's something that most of us really have not done a very good job at doing. And one thing I really recommend you doing is if you have a hotel or a company, you go back to your business, look at how much goes into your sales team, look at payroll, everything, A to Z, the cookie platters, all the costs, and put that against what they delivered in that year, and then compare it to your other commissions, and I guarantee you'll find that it's probably almost as expensive as your other channels. And I've done this for hundreds of hotels, and it is almost never not, oh my God, that was a little bit more than I thought. The problem is that we have payroll for sales or payroll for revenue management or marketing on a different line. Oftentimes even media is not a line where we think, I should be shifting my mix of business here or there based on my returns. It's just, I didn't overspend in my media check, thank you, doing good, and I got a pretty decent return, but we have no idea if really we should be shifting our mix of business. So cost of distribution is incredibly important. Right now, my big project for Q1 next year at Red Lion is to understand the return on investment for every dollar within the company so that we can consistently, always at a near live basis, not only see our production, but for our 1,400 hotels to understand what every dollar costs us to get by every channel. So there you've got one perspective, and then you have a cost of distribution, which creates a permutation of variances, right? But then we bring in the next layer, which is a lens, right, again, which is product type. And the easy understanding of product type is room, and then a room type upgrade, and then free parking, and blah, 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 right? But product also, of course, varies, and we're very good at in our industry by defining product by lead time, length of stay, what's the restriction, what's the qualified audience, how committed is the reservation, meaning, of course, what's the cancellation policy, right? And so the diversification of product is very important to understand. And one thing that we do terribly as an industry is room type differentials. Oftentimes, when I do personal travel, I'm quite a cheap son of a gun because I like to travel so much, though. So more travel, less, time in hotel rooms, is that what I'm really looking for if I go to a big city is the best room with a decent view. Right? So I don't really care about that bar price at all. And what is almost obnoxiously impossible to find out as a consumer is, I don't give a shit what's in the lobby. I'm not going to be in the lobby. What I care about is, what am I waking up to in that morning so I can cock-a-doodle-doo the world and go out and say hello. And it's virtually impossible to see that. So we've got to get a lot better at dealing with our product and showing what that is and understanding ourselves and segmenting pricing around it. And then, of course, the last piece is to understand the consumer's buying behavior. And a great example of an old school mindset with buying behavior is this last-minute cancellations, right? It's definitely been on the bitch list for several years for us in the industry. And it's frustrating, and we should overbook ahead of time, blah, 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 blah. And we kind of have, maybe you've heard the things that we train the consumer to lower prices in the last minute as we all chase each other to the bottom, which is a little bit true. But have you ever just tried not chasing? In most cases, those consumers, bon voyage, toodaloo, going to the hotel across the street. And so you don't really have a choice in a lot of ways. The other element is there are consumers more than ever that are incentivized to travel if the price is right. So if you are in Timbuktu on the side of a freeway, maybe dropping rate probably isn't going to drive demand, right? But there are consumer behaviors if you are in a primary, secondary, or even a rising tertiary market where if the price of the trip is right, people will pack bags and head out. Like that millennial generation, right? They love their avocado toast, and they will go places last minute. My mom loves avocado toast also, though, and she's an oldie. So anyway, so it's important to understand that there's a buying behavior that you're catering to, which may be affected by also the channel, which is hotel tonight would be a great example of that last-minute consumer that could be incentivized to buy. There's also hotel tonight buyers or last-minute buyers that never book early, right? They are going to they have always been coming to the market, and they've always planned to show up and buy a room last minute. And oftentimes I fit into that case. So if you negate that behavior and say my goal is not to have to deal with last-minute bookings and only overbook and always be sold out by day of arrival, that's fine, but understand you're literally Xing off an entire segment of a consumer buying behavior, right? So what this world, I mean, I'll ask, but I also ask you not to respond. Are there any of these that we don't need to consider in order to have a great, a great revenue strategy? I mean, you could just like scream, yes, I don't like the top right. But we really need all these. I guess, I'm a fan of my own opinion, obviously. But what happens, of course, is there are multiple lenses that have multiple angles, and it creates a world of strategies that are permutations so deep that you, even if you're in a bumpered revenue management software system assisted world, it's very complex to manage this. And so this is where we're going. But what I would argue is, the answer is not to stick just to an old school way. The answer is to say, I need to see the puzzle for all the pieces that are there. I need to solve for the most important elements of this permutation, or you're really behind. And the first step is knowing that this exists, and this is how you need to be tracking where you're going. The next step, start seeing data as it is. And this certainly complements the 4 lenses of Kelvin's permutation hell, basically. And so a few little simple things. So again, I mean, this really leads to, if you're not playing in data visualization, it's certainly an opportunity that you're missing. Most of the software out there is very easy. I personally am a massive fan of Tableau. Power BI is also very good. It's very much like an iPhone, so if you're intimidated by it, the price is not incredibly expensive. You can jump into it if you have raw data, and you can start playing with it. It's almost like an iPhone intuition, so you don't need to learn how to code in order to play with it. So please, I'm telling you, if you care about your career in the next 3 or 4 years, get one of these in your organization, a data visualizer. So the first thing, one of my favorite ahas is that rolling up big data by netting and averaging hides true consumer behaviors, right? So a super easy answer is if you're looking at monthly pace. Monthly pace is, of course, made up by daily pace, which is, of course, made up by market segments, right? And so if you're ahead over a period that is going to have super high demand last minute, and you're selling ahead, of course, the easy answer is that data can lie to you, right? Which is that you're ahead because you sold too fast, because last year you were holding back more, which was a better strategy. And then, of course, all you have is to get down, and you're going to lose into the day of arrival, right? And so that's a great example. And that exists right here is an example of one of the dashboards we use at Red Lion, which basically we take every booking as it's netted out by reservation status. And in Opera, for example, most hotels mimic the same thing. There are 6 statuses to reservations, which is canceled, checked in, checked out, day canceled, which would be a shortened reservation, no show, and reserved, which are 6 elements that are dimensions that exist on the metric, which is the reservation by room or room number, that describe if it's a debit or a credit, which is, do I have liability to return this or not? And so, of course, a reservation that is canceled is two accounting metrics on the ledger, right? And so, when I ran the New York Hilton Midtown, I used to show up there at 7 a.m. and I would print out this horrible, obnoxious 75 pages of everything that booked in the last 24 hours. And it was the most important thing probably that I did every day, which was to flip through that fucker. I mean, just really, it really deserves to be called that. And just would go through and like, that's a good rate, that's a good rate, that's a good rate, that's a bad rate, that's a little risky, what is that? And I would just highlight hundreds of rates that were plugging holes in the dam to make sure that my strategy was delivering what I wanted. And I would have my poor analysts go hunt down these rates and find out what was going on, how are they getting through, right? So it was kind of a philosophy that said the best first step to good revenue management is to stop screwing up. And so one thing that Tableau allowed me to take this process, now I have 1,400 hotels and I can do this for my entire enterprise in 20 minutes, is I can pop this guy up there and I can take the market background to see how the market performed in ADR or RevPAR by same day last year, heighted by the bars. Height is high ADR, darkness is occupancy. So we want tall, dark, handsome bars. And above the line are bookings that are on the books, whether they're transacted historically or booked or reserved waiting to come in, and on the bottom is a cancellation or loss. I have whatever segmentation I chose to view through, and I know that if I'm booking above the line, I'm probably lifting my market. If I'm below, I'm ultimately drawing down to where I need to compete against, and as you can see, not very well, but you still can a little. All these bubbles, size by ADR, heighted by ADR, and color by market segment, tell me exactly what's going on. So you can imagine that I'm looking for these little sons of guns down at the bottom going, how are these teeny tiny little rates coming in so low, and what's going on here? And maybe that's acceptable with a permanent contract, but not acceptable from the OTA perspective or a retail perspective because something's going rotten in Denmark, right? So again, it's that ability. You can hover over it and see exactly what it is and find it. And so that's the first thing that my entire revenue team does in our enterprise, and it stops a lot of madness from going on. So again, seeing reservations as they are, you may, if you netted them up, you might see, wow, I only booked 2 rooms on Expedia last night, when the reality is you booked 30 and canceled 30, and the net is $3, right? And so looking through even a single netted day of pickup is an average that can lie about what really is going on in your market. Booking debit credit, debit holds next. All right, almost done. This puppy just hit 0. Okay, so align your commercial org. This is a super basic one, but it's so basic that if you're not doing, you've really got to start to bang the drum in your organization to get this there. So this is not a hostile takeover of revenue management or revenue strategy, but what it is, and it doesn't matter where this leader comes from, what you cannot have is siloed marketing, sales, and revenue management. Commercial is commercial is commercial, and if it is not that in your organization, you guys are in trouble, which means that there needs to be central revenue strategy that is driven by a central source of business intelligence that drives sales, pricing, marketing, and distribution in any org that's going to survive where things are going. So again, it needs to be a data-driven customer acquisition leader in the middle. Or a group of friends, maybe, but regardless, it can't be different priorities. The next is a single source of commercial business intelligence used by all. It's sort of a repetitive statement. I should look at my slides more. Streamline incentives, which again means that, of course, that we are not paying group just to fill in volume when they're maybe displacing transient that would have better in a different place. And the next piece is to assign attribution to all channels of business. So again, attribution can be a really scary place, of course, which is to understand where it came from. But you can still pick simple rules and understand what your rules of attribution in fact are. And you really can back of the napkin math, something that's certainly better than nothing, to understand how you get your attribution and where it comes from. So that's back to that understanding what the cost of every dollar in your org is. And then what I would go to far as say, if you're really bored with nothing to do on the weekends, understanding the incrementality of each channel as well. So for example, it's the notion that maybe sales in my organization is my second best return on investment, but their incrementality index to the rest of the channels is very low. It's one of the lowest, which means in total, it's almost like a RevPAR metric. You could say that if they are ultimately 50% of their bookings are coming over dates that I could have gotten better rates in other places or could have just not paid Roger, Bob, and Fitz to drive that business in my sales team, then ultimately their value to the revenue final output is not nearly as strong when you're just looking through cost of distribution. So that's where we're going. I'm disappointed. I had a funny joke for Charlie that I didn't get to get in, so I'm just going to awkwardly slice it in as I close out my time. So when I was talking about relevant content, what I was going to say is that, like, you want it to be subtle and relevant and easy as you're consuming media in a lean-back format. And so it would be appropriate maybe for like Locks of Love to be chasing Charlie on Facebook. That would have been, yeah, like funny and kind of like, oh God, they want my hair. We don't even know each other. We don't even know each other. Thank you. Have a great conference. Oh.